Hello students and welcome to Lesson 5, Day 5. We're going to be looking at understanding 2/4 and 3/4 times. We're going to be looking at understanding eighth notes, rests, and notes in the G position. This lesson is a real big breakout lesson because before we've been stuck in 4/4 time and we've been stuck in this C hand position where we're just playing C, D, E, F, and G in both hands. But now we're going to break out. We're going to learn some new notes, some new types of notes, and some new time signatures. Let's get started. This is pretty easy to understand. This is, as you can see, 4/4 time right here, and there's 4 beats in this measure. There's 1 plus 2 plus 3, 4. This measure down here in the left hand has a 3 count note and a 1 count note. So 3 plus 1 is 4. So that's pretty easy to understand. Every single measure adds up to 4/4. Well, look, guess what 2/4 is? Here's a couple of measures of 2/4. This first measure right here has a half note, which as you know is 2 counts. Same thing for the left hand. And this measure right over here has a quarter note plus another quarter note. 1 plus 1 equals 2. This means that every single measure in 2/4 can add up to 2 counts. And finally, we have 3/4. Over here in the treble clef, we have a dotted half note, which equals 3 counts. And here in the bass clef, we have 3 quarter notes, which equal to 1 count each. Okay, very, very easy to understand. And in our songs this week, we're going to play a waltz, which of course is 3/4 time, and we're going to play Hot Cross Buns, which is in 2/4 time. All right, let's keep going. Scroll down here a little bit. Now, we've talked about whole notes before. By the way, we're back in 4/4 time for this example. A whole note is 4 counts, and we know it's one big round circle. A half note is 2 counts. A quarter note is 1. So here we look at these eighth notes in this measure, and what do we see? These are notes that kind of look like the quarter notes, don't they? The quarter notes are filled in and they have this beam up here, but the eighth notes, look at this, they've got this extra little flag at the top, right where my cursor is pointing over. That's what makes them eighth notes. Now here, it's very important not to get confused. An eighth note does not get an eighth of a count. It gets half of a count. The reason it's called eighth, let's just remember our basic fractions here. A whole is 4, so therefore a half is 2, so therefore a quarter is 1, and therefore an eighth is 1/2. So always remember there's a difference between what we call the note and the count value that it gets. That may be confusing to some people, but that's just something you have to accept. That's just how music works. Okay, let's go down. One more example. And when I play the song Hot Cross Buns, you're really going to understand this better. But I'm going to show you how we would count eighth notes. Because we can count quarter notes just 1, 2, 3, 4, but now we're in a half of a count. So how is this actually going to work? Well, we see here, we're going to go 1, A, 2, A. What does the A mean? I'm going to say that the A stands for and. So usually when you count eighth notes, you're going to count 1 and 2 and. Okay, understand this. Notice that these notes on the A come in between beats. This is what happens when we make notes that are even smaller than the basic beat. We have to come up with a new way of counting it. Okay, in this measure right here we have 1 and then this count would be count 2 because it's a quarter note. This is count 3 and this is count 4. Here we have similar examples in 3/4 and in 2/4, 1 and 2 held over through count 3, and this is 1 and 2 and. Now you may wonder, why do I have these numbers right here in parentheses? Why do I have this number over here in parentheses? Well, now remember, when every single half note, such as in this case over here, gets 2 counts, okay? So I hit this half note on count 3 and then hold it through count 4. That's a total of 2 counts, isn't it? So the count 4 is silent. You're not going to be hitting a note on count 4. And over here in this 3/4 measure, you're going to have 1 and 2. You hold this note through count 3. Okay? And I know this may seem a little theoretical right now, but once we get to hot cross buns and I start counting along, everything will make a lot more sense. Next thing we're going to look at, understanding rests. Obviously, there's times in music where you play a note, and there's times of music where you stop playing for a second, or for more amount of time. Whenever you stop playing and you're not doing anything, that's just called resting. I think that's pretty simple. Here we have an example of a whole rest and a half rest. Let's look at this measure here. Down here in the bass clef, you see this little symbol right here. It looks like an upside down hat. That means you rest the entire measure. You don't do anything that whole measure. So for 4 counts, you just don't play anything. Up here in the bass clef, in the treble clef, you have a half note which gets 2 counts. And then look at this. This looks like kind of a right side up hat. It looks pretty much like this one, but just a little bit different. So a half rest is the same thing as, guess what, a half note. That's pretty simple. So you're going to rest for 2 counts. So you would play this note for 1, 2, and then you would rest for 1, 2. Okay? Now look at this next measure here. Here we are in 3/4 time. Notice beat 1 is on this quarter note. Beat 2 comes right here, and look at this little symbol. Looks totally different. This is called the quarter rest, meaning you rest for 1 count. Just like if you were going to play a quarter note, you would play for 1 count. Well, here you just rest for 1 count. And finally, in this measure, we have an example of an 8th rest up here and down here. This is 2/4 time, so this would be 1 and 2, and then you would rest on the last 8th beat. And of course, an 8th rest gets the same number of counts as an 8th note. It gets half a count. Okay? Final thing we want to look at are some new notes. We're going to learn some new notes now. And in your next lesson, you're going to see where these notes are on the piano. Pretty soon, you're going to play a song in this new G position. And you may want to just kind of save this last picture here in your lesson when you start writing in the names of the notes for the songs you're going to play. Here we see this is the note G. That's the note G. You've seen that before. You've had the G before in all your songs. The note after that is going to be A, then B, then C, and then D. Now this is what's kind of neat. Notice this C down here in the left hand. This C in the left hand was once your middle C, but now you're going to play it with your left hand. I know this may be confusing because you're just looking at a picture of notes. Don't worry, in the next lesson I'm going to show you exactly how to get into this position and learn these new notes. Over here we have 2 chords that are going to be with us in all of our songs in the G position. One is the D major chord. Now notice right here. This note over here is G. The D major chord has an F sharp. That's right below G. I know this is the first sharp you've ever had. That's going to be explained very well in the next lesson. And finally, over here, we've got our G major chord with our G, our B, and our D. And up here, a G, a B, and a D. Okay? So, go back, review some of this. This is a lot in one lesson. But don't worry, in the next lesson, we're going to really see how this works visually. And then in the next 2 lessons, we're going to learn to play 2 new songs in this new position. And we're going to play songs in 2/4 and 4/4. Okay? Thanks, and I'll see you in day 2.